The sun was high in the sky as Linda Park pulled into the parking lot of Elite Motors, the most prestigious car dealership in the city. She parked her old Honda Civic in between two gleaming luxury vehicles that made her car look even more worn out than it already was. The faithful sedan had served her well for over 10 years, but lately, the repair bills were adding up, and she decided it was finally time for something new. Linda wasn't dressed for car shopping. Her simple blue jeans had a small paint stain on the knee from the community center, where she'd spent the morning helping repaint the children's playroom. Her plain white t-shirt and light jacket were practical rather than fashionable, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She hadn't planned to visit the dealership today, but she'd finished volunteering earlier than expected and thought she might as well take a look while she had some free time. As she stepped out of her car, she took a deep breath. Linda had been saving for years, putting aside a portion of her modest income from her job as a school librarian. Her husband Tom had insisted she buy something nice for herself, something reliable and safe that would last her another decade. She didn't need anything fancy, but she did want to treat herself to something a little special after years of careful budgeting. The dealership's glass doors slid open smoothly as Linda approached, revealing a showroom floor that gleamed under strategically placed lighting. New cars in various colors sat on rotating platforms, their polished surfaces reflecting the overhead lights. The air smelled of new leather and expensive cologne. Soft classical music played in the background, and a coffee bar stood in one corner, complete with a barista serving complimentary drinks to customers. Linda stood just inside the entrance for a moment, taking it all in. Several salespeople in crisp suits moved around the floor, engaged in conversation with well-dressed customers. She noticed a sleek blue sedan on display near the center of the showroom and walked over to take a closer look. The price tag made her wince slightly, but it was within the budget she and Tom had discussed. For nearly 15 minutes, Linda wandered around the showroom, looking at various models, checking price tags, and reading the information cards placed next to each vehicle. Despite the half-dozen salespeople on the floor, not one approached her or even made eye contact. She noticed them glancing her way occasionally, only to quickly look away and move toward other customers who were dressed more expensively. Finally, Linda approached a salesman who had just finished speaking with another customer. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Could I get some information about that blue sedan over there?" The salesman, whose name tag read Richard, looked her up and down quickly. His smile never reached his eyes. "That model might be a bit out of your price range," he said, his tone condescending. "We have some pre-owned vehicles at our other location across town. Perhaps those would be more suitable." Linda blinked in surprise. "Actually, I've been saving for quite a while, and I'd really like to know more about the new models you have here." Richard's smile tightened. "Of course, but the particular model you're looking at starts at $45,000, and with the features most of our clients prefer, it typically sells for closer to $60,000. "I understand," Linda replied calmly. "That's actually within my budget. Could you tell me about the safety features and fuel efficiency?" Before Richard could respond, another customer entered the showroom, a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Richard's attention immediately shifted. "Excuse me for one moment," he said to Linda, not waiting for a response before walking briskly toward the new arrival. Linda stood there feeling invisible. She decided to try again and approached a female salesperson who was typing something at a desk near the coffee bar. "Hi there," Linda said. "I was hoping to get some information about your sedans." The woman, whose name tag read Vanessa, looked up with a professional smile that faded slightly as she took in Linda's casual appearance. "Are you looking for someone in particular?" she asked. "Most of our sales staff is with clients right now." "I was just hoping to speak with someone about purchasing a new car," Linda explained. "I've been looking around for about 20 minutes, but nobody has approached me." Vanessa's smile became strained. "I see. Well, as I said, our sales team is quite busy at the moment with scheduled appointments. Perhaps you could come back another time. We recommend making an appointment for the best service." Linda felt her cheeks growing warm. She wasn't naive. She understood exactly what was happening. I don't need an appointment to look at cars that are for sale, do I? She asked, keeping her voice level despite her rising frustration. No, of course not, Vanessa replied quickly. It's just that our sales team prioritizes clients who have made appointments or who are returning customers. She glanced meaningfully at Linda's casual attire and then back at her computer screen, clearly dismissing her. Taking a deep breath, Linda decided to try one more time. She spotted the sales manager's office, a glass-walled room at the back of the showroom with Gregory, Wilson sales director, etched on the door. She walked over and knocked lightly on the open door. A man in his 50s looked up from his computer. His tailored suit probably cost more than Linda's entire wardrobe. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting that he doubted he could. "I hope so," Linda said. "I've been here for almost half an hour now and no one seems interested in helping me look at cars. I'm ready to make a purchase today, but I can't seem to get anyone's attention." Gregory leaned back in his chair and studied her. "What exactly were you looking to purchase, Mrs. Park, Linda Park? And I'm interested in the new Lux 500 sedan you have on display. The blue one." A small smirk appeared on Gregory's face. "The Lux 500 is our premium model, Mrs. Park. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. That vehicle typically appeals to a certain clientele." His eyes flicked over her paint-stained jeans and simple jacket. Linda felt a flash of anger but kept her composure. "I understand it's an expensive car, Mr. Wilson, but as I told your salesperson, it's within my budget." Gregory stood up and came around his desk. "Look, Mrs. Park, I've been in this business for 25 years. I know when someone is wasting my staff's time. We get people coming in here all the time wanting to test drive cars they can't afford, just for the fun of it." "That's not what I'm doing," Linda said firmly. "I came here to buy a car. I have excellent credit and I'm prepared to make a substantial down payment today." Gregory's smile was cold now. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Mrs. Park. We have serious customers to attend to and you're taking up valuable resources." Linda stood her ground. "Are you refusing to sell me a car because of how I'm dressed?" "I'm refusing to have my sales team waste their time," Gregory replied, his voice hardening. "Now I suggest you try the dealership on the east side. They have more accessible options that might better suit your situation." By now, several customers and salespeople were watching the exchange. Linda felt their eyes on her, some curious, others amused. Her face burned with humiliation, but she held her head high. "I think I understand perfectly," she said quietly. "Thank you for making your position so clear, Mr. Wilson." With as much dignity as she could muster, Linda turned and walked across the showroom floor toward the exit. She could hear whispers and a few snickers behind her. The glass doors slid open and she stepped out into the sunshine, taking a deep breath of fresh air to steady herself. As she walked to her old Honda, she pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. When the call connected, she kept her voice steady despite the anger and hurt she felt. "Hi, honey," she said. "You won't believe what just happened at Elite Motors." She paused, listening to her husband's concerned voice on the other end. "No, I'm fine. Just my pride is a little bruised, but Tom, I think they're going to regret how they treated me today." Linda slid into her car and started the engine, which coughed twice before catching. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she glanced back at the gleaming dealership with its perfectly polished windows and immaculate showroom. Little did they know who her husband was, or what tomorrow would bring. She smiled slightly to herself as she drove away. Some people were about to learn a valuable lesson about judging others based on appearances, and Linda would be there to watch it unfold. Linda pulled into the driveway of her modest two-story home just as the afternoon sun began to fade. The house wasn't large or fancy, but it was comfortable and full of warmth. She sat in her car for a moment, her hand still gripping the steering wheel, trying to shake off the humiliation she'd felt at the dealership. With a deep breath, she grabbed her purse and headed inside. The familiar smell of garlic and herbs greeted her as she opened the front door. Tom was already home and cooking dinner, something he often did when he wasn't too busy with work. The sound of chopping came from the kitchen, along with the soft, melody of jazz music playing from the small speaker on the counter. "I'm home," Linda called out, hanging her jacket on the hook by the door. Tom appeared in the kitchen doorway, wooden spoon in hand and a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. At 45, he still had the same kind eyes and warm smile that had made her fall in love with him 20 years ago. His dark hair now had streaks of silver at the temples, which Linda always said made him look distinguished. "Hey there," he said, his smile fading as he noticed her expression. "What's wrong? You look upset." Linda walked over and gave him a quick kiss. "Just had an interesting experience at the car dealership." "Not the good kind of interesting." Tom's brow furrowed with concern. "Elite Motors? The one you were planning to check out today?" "That's the one," Linda said, following him back into the kitchen. She leaned against the counter as Tom returned, to stirring a pot of pasta sauce on the stove. "Can I help with anything?" "No, it's almost ready. Just need to finish the salad," Tom replied. "So what happened at the dealership?" Linda poured herself a glass of water and took a sip before answering. "Well, let's just say they made it very clear that I wasn't their type of customer." As they worked together to finish preparing dinner, Linda recounted the entire experience, how she'd been ignored by the sales staff, dismissed by the salesperson, and ultimately asked to leave by the sales manager. Tom listened quietly, but she could see the muscle in his jaw tightening as she spoke. "So then this Gregory Wilson person actually told you to try the East Side dealership instead?" Tom asked as they sat down at the dining table with plates of spaghetti and garlic bread. Linda nodded, twirling pasta around her fork. "His exact words were that they had more accessible options that might better suit my situation. All because I was wearing jeans with a paint stain and didn't look like I could afford their precious cars." Tom set down his fork, his dinner momentarily forgotten. "That's outrageous, Linda. They can't treat people like that." "Oh, but they did," Linda said with a sigh. "And I'm sure they do it all the time. You should have seen how they fawned over this guy in an expensive suit who walked in while I was there, practically tripped over themselves to help him." "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Tom said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "You don't deserve to be treated that way. Nobody does." Linda smiled at her husband. Most people who met Tom had no idea who he really was. He drove an ordinary car, wore simple clothes, and never flashed his wealth. They'd agreed early in their marriage, after his tech company unexpectedly took off, that they wouldn't let money change who they were or how they lived. The company, Park Innovations, had started in their garage with just an idea and Tom's savings. Now it was worth billions, with offices in 12 countries and over 5,000 employees worldwide. But they'd kept their success quiet in their personal lives, choosing to live modestly and donate much of their wealth to causes they believed in. "I know I don't," Linda agreed. "But what bothers me most is thinking about all the other people they must treat that way, people who don't have the means to go elsewhere or stand up for themselves." Tom was quiet for a moment, thoughtfully chewing a bite of garlic bread. Linda could almost see the wheels turning in his head. "You know," he said finally, "I've been looking for a new community project for the company's foundation. Something local, with real impact." Linda raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Tom said slowly, "that Elite Motors might benefit from a lesson in how to treat people with dignity and respect, regardless of how they're dressed or what car they drive." A small smile played at the corners of Linda's mouth. "What kind of lesson did you have in mind?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," Tom admitted. "But I think it might start with finding out who owns the dealership and whether this kind of behavior is systematic or just limited to a few bad apples." After dinner, they cleaned up together, falling into their usual rhythm, Tom washing while Linda dried and put away. It was a simple routine they'd maintained even after they could afford to hire help. These quiet moments together were precious to them both. Later that evening, Tom disappeared into his home office, while Linda curled up in the living room with a book. She could hear him on the phone, his voice rising and falling as he spoke to various people. After about an hour, he emerged with a determined look on his face. "So," he said, sitting down beside her on the couch, "Elite Motors is owned by TriStar Automotive Group. They own 12 dealerships across 3 states, and their CEO is a man named Victor Reynolds. Linda set her book aside. You've been busy. I made a few calls, Tom said with a shrug. Jeff in legal knows someone who used to work for TriStar. Apparently, they have a reputation for aggressive sales tactics and catering exclusively to high-end clients. That doesn't surprise me, Linda said. Here's the interesting part, Tom continued, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he was forming a plan. TriStar is looking for investors. They want to expand but need capital. They've been courting several venture capital firms, including Wilson Partners. Isn't that the firm your college roommate runs? Linda asked. Tom nodded. David Wilson. And he owes me a favor after I helped his daughter get that internship last summer. Linda leaned forward, intrigued. So what's the plan? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to call David and see if he can get me a meeting with Victor Reynolds, as a potential investor, of course. I want to see how deep this problem goes. Is it just that one dealership, or is it company policy to judge customers by their appearance? And then what? Linda asked. Tom's expression was serious now. Then we decide how best to address the problem. I don't want revenge, Linda. I want change. Real, lasting change in how they do business. Linda smiled and took his hand. This was why she loved him. Despite his success and wealth, Tom had never lost sight of what really mattered. Treating people with kindness and respect. I have another idea, she said after a moment. What about Diane? She could help. Diane Chen was one of Linda's closest friends and a well-respected business consultant who specialized in customer service training. She had worked with several major companies to transform their approach to client interactions. Tom's face brightened. That's perfect. If we can get TriStar to implement a comprehensive training program, it could change their entire corporate culture. They stayed up late into the night, outlining a plan that went far beyond simple retribution. By the time they went to bed, Tom had emails drafted to his lawyer, his financial team, and several key contacts who could help put their plan into action. As Linda laid her head on the pillow, she felt a sense of purpose rather than anger. What had happened to her that day was unfortunate, but perhaps it could lead to something positive, not just for her but for anyone who might walk into Elite Motors or any TriStar dealership in the future. Do you think it will work? She asked Tom as he set his alarm for the morning. He turned to her, his expression determined in the dim light. I don't know, but I do know that people like Gregory Wilson only understand one language, money and power. So that's what we'll use to get their attention. After that, it's up to them whether they want to listen to what we have to say. Linda smiled and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. And unlike today, it would be the good kind of interesting. Tom woke before his alarm the next morning, his mind already racing with plans. The digital clock on his nightstand read 5:47 a.m. as he carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to wake Linda. He padded quietly to the kitchen, started the coffee maker, and headed to his home office. By 6:30 a.m., he had sent a dozen emails and made 3 phone calls to people in different time zones. His executive assistant, Patty, was surprised to get a call so early but quickly shifted into high gear when Tom explained what he needed. I want everything we can find on TriStar Automotive Group, he told her. Financial reports, news articles, employee reviews, customer complaints, the works, and I need it before my 9 a.m. meeting. Consider it done, Patty replied, the sound of her keyboard already clicking in the background. And should I clear your schedule for today? Yes, except for the Wilson Partners meeting. That one's important. Tom was just pouring his second cup of coffee when Linda appeared in the doorway, her hair tousled from sleep but her eyes alert. You're up early, she said, accepting the mug he offered her. Couldn't sleep? Too much to do, Tom replied with a small smile. David Wilson agreed to meet us at his office at 9. I told him I was interested in a potential investment opportunity with TriStar Automotive. Linda raised her eyebrows. Us? You want me to come too? Of course, Tom said. You're the one who experienced their customer service firsthand. Besides, We've always made big decisions together, haven't we? 2 hours later, they were sitting in the plush waiting area of Wilson Partners' downtown office. Tom wore one of his few expensive suits, a concession to the expectations of the business world, while Linda had chosen a simple but elegant navy dress. They looked like what they were, a successful couple, though few would guess just how successful. David. Wilson himself came out to greet them, his handshake firm and his smile genuine. He and Tom had remained friends since college, despite taking different paths in life. While Tom had built his tech company from the ground up, David had gone into finance and now ran one of the city's most respected investment firms. Tom, Linda, great to see you both, David said, leading them into a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I have to admit, I was surprised to get your call. You've never shown much interest in automotive investments before. Things change, Tom said easily, taking a seat at the polished table. Tell me about TriStar. David pulled up a presentation on the large screen at the end of the room. TriStar Automotive Group, founded 20 years ago by Victor Reynolds, currently operates 12 high-end dealerships across 3 states. Annual revenue last year was just over $400 million. Tom nodded, absorbing the information. And they're looking for investors? They want to expand to the East Coast, David confirmed. They're looking for about $50 million in capital. We've been in talks with them for a few months now, but haven't committed yet. Why not? Linda asked, speaking up for the first time. David glanced at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he answered. Some concerns about their corporate culture, to be honest. High turnover rate among employees. Some questionable sales tactics. Nothing illegal, but... He shrugged. Questionable. How? Tom pressed. Aggressive upselling. Pressure tactics on customers. And there have been some complaints about discriminatory treatment, showing preference to certain types of customers over others. Linda and Tom exchanged a look. Like what happened to me yesterday, Linda said quietly. David looked confused, so Tom briefly explained Linda's experience at Elite Motors. As he listened, David's expression darkened. That's exactly the kind of thing I've been hearing about, he said when Tom finished. And it concerns me. A company's ethics matter, especially in today's business environment. I agree, Tom said, which is why I'm interested. Not just as an investor, but as someone who might be able to help change things. David leaned back in his chair, studying his old friend. You're not just looking for a return on investment, are you? You have something else in mind. Tom smiled slightly. Let's just say I see potential for improvement. Now, when can you arrange a meeting with Victor Reynolds? By noon, it was set. Victor Reynolds would meet with Tom, Linda, and David the following morning at TriStar's headquarters. But Tom wasn't waiting until then to put his plan in motion. Back at home, he and Linda spent the afternoon in his office, going through the information Patty had compiled. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. TriStar had a history of complaints, similar to Linda's experience. Customers being ignored, dismissed, or even asked to leave based on their appearance or perceived financial status. Look at this, Linda said, pointing to a review online. This woman says she was told they don't offer financing to people from that neighborhood when she mentioned where she lived. That's not just bad customer service, that's discrimination. Tom nodded grimly. And here's an internal memo from last year. He turned his tablet so Linda could see. It actually instructs sales staff to prioritize customers who match our target demographic. They even have a dress code guide for identifying serious buyers. That's horrible, Linda said, her voice tight with anger. And probably illegal too. Definitely unethical, Tom agreed. But there's more. Look at their employee reviews. The employee reviews painted a picture of a toxic work environment where sales staff were pressured to focus only on high commission sales and ignored time wasters, often defined by how people dressed or what car they currently drove. No wonder they treated me that way, Linda said. They're trained to do it, which means this goes beyond just one dealership or one manager, Tom said thoughtfully. It's systemic, part of their corporate culture. As the afternoon wore on, they refined their plan. Tom made more calls, including one to Diane Chen, Linda's friend and the customer service consultant. By evening, they had a clear strategy for the next day's meeting. "Are you sure this will work?" Linda asked as they prepared dinner together. Tom chopped vegetables while he considered the question. "No," he admitted. Victor Reynolds might not care about changing his company's culture. He might be perfectly happy with how things are. Then what? "Then we move to Plan B," Tom said, his voice determined. "But let's hope it doesn't come to that." Later that evening, while Linda was reading in bed, Tom received an email from Patty with one final piece of information he'd requested. He read it twice, a slow smile spreading across his face. "What is it?" Linda asked, noticing his expression. "Just the leverage we might need," Tom replied, showing her the screen. TriStar isn't just looking for investors for expansion. They're in financial trouble. Their last 2 quarters have shown declining sales, and they've had to close one of their smaller dealerships already. So they need this investment to stay afloat, Linda said, understanding dawning. Exactly, which puts us in a much stronger position to demand changes. The next morning, they arrived at TriStar's headquarters 10 minutes early. The building was sleek and modern, with the company's logo, 3 silver stars arranged in a triangle, prominently displayed in the lobby. They were shown to a conference room where David Wilson was already waiting. He stood to greet them, his expression serious. "Ready for this?" he asked Tom in a low voice as they shook hands. "More than ready," Tom replied. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit entered, followed by 2 younger executives. He surveyed the room with the confident air of someone used to being in charge. "Mr. Wilson," he said, nodding to David before turning to Tom and Linda. "And you must be Tom Park. I understand you're interested in investing in our expansion plans." "That's right," Tom said, standing to shake his hand. "And this is my wife, Linda." Victor Reynolds barely glanced at Linda as he shook her hand. "Pleased to meet you both. Shall we get started? I have a busy schedule today." As they all took their seats, Tom caught Linda's eye and gave her a subtle nod. The plan was in motion. Within the hour, Victor Reynolds would learn exactly who he was dealing with, and just how much was about to change at TriStar Automotive Group. Victor Reynolds wasted no time getting down to business. He signaled to one of his assistants, who distributed glossy folders to everyone at the table. "As you can see from our proposal," Victor began, his voice smooth and practiced, "we're looking to expand to 3 key East Coast markets over the next 18 months. Our projections show a potential 30% increase in annual revenue once these new locations are fully operational." Tom opened the folder and glanced briefly at the contents: financial projections, market analyses, and artist renderings of sleek new dealerships. Linda did the same, though she noticed that Victor rarely looked in her direction when he spoke, addressing his comments primarily to Tom and David. "Before we discuss the investment opportunity," Tom said, closing the folder, "I'd like to talk about your current operations, specifically your customer service approach." Victor's smile faltered slightly. "Our customer service is excellent, Mr. Park. We pride ourselves on providing a luxury experience for our clientele." "For some of your clientele, perhaps," Tom replied, "but I understand there have been incidents." The room grew noticeably tenser. Victor's 2 assistants exchanged glances. "Every business has occasional customer complaints," Victor said dismissively. "In the high-end automotive world, customers have exceptionally high expectations." "I'm not talking about occasional complaints," Tom said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. "I'm talking about a pattern of discriminatory behavior." Victor's smile disappeared entirely. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Park, one I strongly reject." "Let me be more specific," Tom continued. He pulled out his tablet and slid it across the table. "Here are 67 documented complaints from customers who felt they were treated poorly, based on their appearance, race, gender, or perceived economic status. All from your dealerships, all within the last year." Victor barely glanced at the tablet. "As I said, in a business of our size, and here," Tom continued, placing a printed document on the table, is an internal memo from your sales director at your flagship location, instructing staff to prioritize customers who match our target demographic and to minimize time spent with obvious non-buyers. The color drained slightly from Victor's face. Where did you get that? That's not the question you should be asking, Tom replied. The question is, do you condone this behavior in your company? Victor straightened his tie, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Park, with all due respect, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our sales strategy simply recognizes that certain customers are more likely to make a purchase than others. It's just good business. Is it good business to judge people based on how they're dressed? Linda spoke, up for the first time, her voice quiet but clear. Victor's eyes flicked to her, then back to Tom. Mrs. Park, in the luxury car business. I wasn't asking rhetorically, Linda interrupted. I'm genuinely curious if you think it's good business to kick out customers who are ready to make a purchase, simply because they're wearing jeans instead of a suit. Understanding dawned on Victor's face. Has someone at one of our dealerships treated you poorly? If so, I apologize. Perhaps we could offer you a special discount on your next purchase as compensation. This isn't about getting a discount, Linda said. This is about human dignity and basic respect. David Wilson, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Victor, I think what the Parks are trying to say is that TriStar's corporate culture may be hurting your business more than you realize. And, Tom added, it could potentially expose you to legal liability. Discrimination lawsuits are expensive, even when you win them. Victor's jaw tightened. Are you threatening me, Mr. Park? Not at all, Tom replied calmly. I'm offering to help you. As a potential investor, I have a vested interest in seeing TriStar succeed. But I only invest in companies whose values align with my own. Companies that treat people with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. And if I'm not interested in your help? Victor asked, his voice cold. Tom glanced at David, who gave a slight nod. Then I'm afraid Wilson Partners won't be able to provide the capital you're seeking, David said. And given your current financial situation, I doubt you'll find another investor willing to overlook these issues. The two assistants looked alarmed, but Victor maintained his composure, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. What exactly do you want? He asked Tom directly. I want to make you a different kind of offer, Tom said, reaching into his briefcase and pulling out a new folder, which he slid across the table, one that could benefit everyone involved, including your customers and employees. Victor hesitated, then opened the folder. His eyebrows rose slightly as he read. You want to buy a controlling interest in TriStar? He asked, looking up. 40%, Tom confirmed. Enough to have a significant say in operations, but leaving you as the majority shareholder. In return, you get the capital you need, plus something even more valuable. Which is a complete overhaul of your customer service approach, led by one of the top consultants in the industry, Tom said. New training programs for all staff, a revised compensation structure that rewards quality customer interactions, not just sales numbers, and a commitment to serving all customers with respect and dignity. That sounds expensive, Victor said skeptically. Less expensive than the class action lawsuit that's currently being organized by former customers, Tom replied. He nodded toward his tablet. Those 67 complaints I mentioned? They're now in contact with each other thanks to social media. They're sharing stories, building a case. This was a slight exaggeration. Tom had only just connected with a few of the complainants through his legal team, but the shocked expression on Victor's face suggested the bluff was working. You're bluffing, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Tom asked. Are you willing to bet your company on that? The room fell silent as Victor seemed to weigh his options. After a long moment, he looked at Linda. Was it Elite? Motors? He asked. Were you the one who was mistreated? Linda nodded. Yesterday afternoon, I came in to look at a new car. I was dressed casually because I'd been volunteering. Your sales manager, Gregory Wilson, suggested I try a used car, lot on the east side instead. Said I was wasting his staff's time. Victor closed his eyes briefly, looking genuinely pained. I apologize for that experience, Mrs. Park. Truly. Thank you, Linda said. But as I said, this isn't about me. It's about changing a culture that allows people to be treated that way in the first place. Victor turned his attention back to Tom. And who exactly are you, Mr. Park? Why does this matter so much to you? Tom smiled slightly. My name is Thomas Park. I founded Park Innovations 20 years ago. The effect was immediate. Victor's eyes widened and one of his assistants actually gasped. Park Innovations was one of the largest tech companies in the country, with a market value in the billions. You're that Tom Park? Victor asked, his voice suddenly respectful. The same, Tom confirmed. And while I could easily buy TriStar outright, that's not my goal here. My goal is transformation, not acquisition. The next hour was intense. Victor's initial shock gave way to cautious interest as Tom and David laid out the details of their proposal. The investment would provide the capital TriStar needed, but it came with clear conditions. A complete overhaul of their customer service policies, mandatory training for all staff, and a new approach to sales that emphasized respect for all customers. And you want your wife's friend, this Diane Chen, to lead the training program? Victor asked, reviewing the proposal. Diane is one of the best in the business, Linda said. She's transformed customer service for companies much larger than TriStar, and she specializes in eliminating unconscious bias in customer interactions. Victor rubbed his chin thoughtfully. And if I agree to all this, what happens to my current sales director? Gregory Wilson? Tom and Linda exchanged a look. That's ultimately your decision, Tom said. But I would suggest he be given a choice. Adapt to the new approach or find another position. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. As the meeting wound down, the tension in the room had shifted to something more productive. Victor wasn't entirely convinced, but he was listening, really listening, for perhaps the first time. I'll need to discuss this with my board, he said finally, gathering the proposal papers. But I'm interested, more than I expected to be, honestly. That's all we ask, Tom said, standing to shake Victor's hand. That you consider it seriously, as they left the TriStar building. David turned to Tom and Linda with an impressed expression. Well played, both of you, he said. I thought he was going to throw us out when you first mentioned the complaints. He was considering it, Tom agreed. But he's a businessman first. He knows when he's cornered. Do you think he'll accept the offer? Linda asked. Tom slipped his arm around her waist as they walked to their car. I think he will. But if not, he shrugged. We moved to Plan B. Which is? David asked. Tom smiled. I buy Elite Motors directly, fire Gregory Wilson, and turn it into a model dealership that puts TriStar to shame. Linda laughed. I like Plan B, actually. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Tom said. Because this isn't about revenge, it's about creating real change. As they drove away from TriStar headquarters, Linda reached over and squeezed Tom's hand. Thank you, she said simply. For what? He asked, glancing at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. For understanding why this matters, for using your power to help others, not just me. Tom smiled. Always. Their phone rang through the car's speaker system. It was Patty, Tom's assistant. Mr. Park, she said, her voice excited. Victor Reynolds just called. He wants to meet again tomorrow morning. He says he's ready to talk terms. Tom and Linda exchanged a smile. Phase 1 of their plan had worked even better than they'd hoped. Now came the real challenge. Transforming TriStar from the inside out. 3 months later, Linda pulled into the parking lot of Elite Motors. This time, instead of her old Honda, she was driving Tom's modest sedan. She sat for a moment, taking a deep breath before stepping out of the car. Despite everything that had happened, she still felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. So, much had changed since that meeting with Victor Reynolds. After consulting with his board, Victor had accepted Tom's offer, 40% ownership in exchange for the capital investment and a complete overhaul of TriStar's customer service approach. The legal papers had been signed within a week, and the transformation had begun immediately. Diane Chen had been hired as a consultant, tasked with retraining staff at all 12 TriStar dealerships. New policies had been implemented, focusing on treating every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of appearance or background. The commission structure had been revised to reward positive customer experiences rather than just sales numbers. It hadn't been easy. Some employees had resisted the changes, clinging to old habits and assumptions. A few had even quit rather than adapt. But the majority had embraced the new direction, especially once they saw how it improved the workplace atmosphere. As Linda walked toward the entrance of Elite Motors, she noticed the difference immediately. The same gleaming cars sat on display, the same elegant showroom awaited behind glass doors. But there was something different about the energy of the place. A sign near the entrance caught her eye. Everyone deserves respect, everyone is welcome. The doors slid open and Linda stepped inside. A young woman at the reception desk looked up with a genuine smile. "Good morning, welcome to Elite Motors. How can I help you today?" "I'm Linda Park," she replied. "I have an appointment with Gregory Wilson." Recognition flickered in the receptionist's eyes, but her professional smile never wavered. "Of course, Mrs. Park. Mr. Wilson is expecting you. I'll let him know you're here." Linda took a seat in the waiting area, observing the showroom floor. Sales staff moved among the vehicles, engaging with customers of all types. A woman in a business suit, an elderly couple in casual clothes, a young man in jeans and a t-shirt. Each received the same attentive service. "Mrs. Park." Linda looked up to see Gregory Wilson standing before her. He looked different somehow, the same tailored suit and polished appearance, but his expression was more open, less arrogant than she remembered. "Thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "Would you like to come to my office, or would you prefer to look at some cars first?" "Your office, please," Linda replied, shaking his hand. As they walked through the showroom, Gregory pointed out some of the changes they'd made. "We've reorganized the space to be more welcoming, coffee and refreshments for everyone, not just serious buyers. We've added a children's area over there, so parents can bring their kids along. And we've installed digital information kiosks, so customers can browse at their own pace if they prefer." In his office, Gregory gestured for Linda to take a seat before settling behind his desk. He looked nervous, which was a stark change from their last encounter. "Mrs. Park," he began, "I want to apologize again for how I treated you during your visit here. It was unprofessional, disrespectful, and wrong. There's no excuse for it." Linda studied him. His apology seemed sincere, but she was more interested in actions than words. "I appreciate that, Mr. Wilson, but I'm more curious about what's changed since then." Gregory nodded. "Everything, to be honest. When Mr. Reynolds told me about your husband's investment and the new direction for TriStar, I thought my career was over. I expected to be fired on the spot." "But you weren't," Linda observed. "No," Gregory admitted. "Instead, I was given a choice: adapt to the new approach or leave. I decided to stay, though I wasn't sure I could change the way I'd been doing business for 20 years. "And have you?" Linda asked directly. Gregory smiled ruefully. "It hasn't been easy. Ms. Chen's training sessions were challenging. She made us confront our biases, question our assumptions. She had us role-play scenarios where we were the ones being dismissed or ignored. It was uncomfortable, but necessary." He reached for a folder on his desk. "But the results speak for themselves. Our customer satisfaction scores are up 30%. Sales have increased by 15%, and employee turnover is down by half." He slid the folder across to Linda. "The numbers don't lie." Linda opened the folder, scanning the graphs and charts inside. The transformation was indeed impressive, at least on paper, but numbers didn't tell the whole story. "What about you personally?" she asked, closing the folder. "Has your perspective changed?" Gregory was quiet for a moment, considering her question. "I used to think I could tell at a glance who was a serious buyer and who was wasting my time," he said finally. "I judged people by their clothes, their car, their appearance. I thought that made me efficient. A good businessman. He shook his head slowly. What I didn't realize was how many sales I was losing because of those assumptions. How many potential customers I drove away. How toxic the environment became because of that attitude. Linda nodded but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. Last week, Gregory went on, a woman came in wearing work clothes, paint splattered, jeans, boots, a flannel shirt. 5 months ago, I probably wouldn't have given her the time of day. And now? Linda prompted. I spent an hour with her, showing her our premium models, answering her questions. Turns out, she owns a successful construction company. She bought 2 vehicles that day, one for herself and one for her business. Paid cash for both. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. The point isn't that she was wealthy. The point is that I would have missed that connection entirely before. I would have judged her based on appearance and lost not just a sale, but the chance to help someone find what they needed. Linda smiled. That's a significant shift in perspective. It is, Gregory agreed. And it's made me a better sales director. A better person too, I think. He hesitated. Which brings me to the reason I asked you to come in today. He stood and walked to the door. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Gregory opened the door and gestured to someone waiting outside. A moment later, Tom walked in, accompanied by Victor Reynolds and Diane Chen. Linda looked at them in surprise. What's going on? Tom smiled as he came to stand beside her chair. Sorry for the surprise. We wanted this to be special. Victor stepped forward. Mrs. Park, today marks 3 months since your husband's investment in TriStar and the beginning of our transformation. We wanted you to see firsthand what your experience has helped create. Diane nodded in agreement. The changes here at Elite Motors have been remarkable, but what's more impressive is how these changes have spread to all TriStar dealerships. The entire corporate culture is shifting. And we have you to thank for it, Gregory added. If you hadn't stood up for yourself that day, if you just walked away and never looked back, none of this would have happened. Linda felt a rush of emotion. I didn't do much. Tom was the one who took action. Only because you showed me what needed to change, Tom replied, squeezing her shoulder gently. You've always been my moral compass, Linda. Victor cleared his throat. We've prepared something to show our appreciation. If you'll follow me? Curious, Linda allowed herself to be led back to the showroom floor. There, gleaming under the spotlights, was the blue sedan she had admired on her first visit, the one she'd been dismissed for asking about. We'd be honored if you'd accept this as a gift, Victor said. A token of our gratitude and a reminder of how much your courage has meant to our company. Linda stared at the car in astonishment. That's very generous, but I can't accept such an expensive gift. We thought you might say that, Tom said with a smile. Which is why we have an alternative proposal. Gregory stepped forward. Instead of giving you the car, we'd like to donate its value to the community center where you volunteer. We understand. They're trying to expand their children's program. Linda's eyes widened. That would make an enormous difference to them. They've been fundraising for months to renovate the playroom and add a tutoring space. Then it's settled, Victor said, looking pleased. The donation will be made in your name. As they stood talking, Linda noticed a young couple enter the dealership. They were dressed casually, he in jeans and a sweatshirt, she in leggings and an oversized sweater. They looked nervous, like many first-time car buyers. Without missing a beat, one of the sales staff approached them with a warm welcome, offering coffee and asking questions about what they were looking for. There was no hesitation, no judgment, just genuine service. Linda smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond any personal vindication. This was what real change looked like. Later, as she and Tom were leaving, Gregory walked them to the door. Thank you both, he said sincerely. You could have ruined me, ruined all of us. Instead, you gave us a chance to be better. Everyone deserves that chance, Linda replied, including the customers who walk through your door. I won't forget that lesson again, Gregory promised. As they drove home, Tom reached over and took Linda's hand. So, Mission accomplished? Linda thought about the transformation she'd witnessed, not just in the physical space of the dealership, but in the attitudes of the people working there. She thought about the donation that would help, dozens of children at the community center, and she thought about Gregory Wilson, who had been given the opportunity to change and had risen to the challenge. Yes, she said, squeezing Tom's hand. More than accomplished, I think. You know, Tom said thoughtfully, we could do this with other businesses. Find places where people are being mistreated and help create change. Linda laughed. One crusade at a time, please, but yes, maybe we could. As they pulled into their driveway, Linda felt a deep sense of satisfaction. What had started as a humiliating experience had become something powerful and positive. It wasn't about revenge or teaching someone a lesson. It was about making the world a little bit better, one car dealership at a time. And that, Linda thought, was worth more than any luxury car could ever be.